Hello, my soul friends, and welcome to your Tarot Pick a Card reading. Today, we are going to discover your past life, and we are going to answer 5 questions: who you were, when you were, what you did, how you died, and why it matters to you now. And if you've never done a Tarot Pick a Card, all you have to do is pick one of these 3 piles and use your intuition to select whichever pile calls to you the most to help you make that decision. I'm going to show you each of these images on the cards up close and just really take a deep breath, look at the image, and if you feel an attraction to it, that means you have a message from the universe in that pile. So let's look at these images up close. Your first card, the first pile, pile 1, is the telephone. Pile 2 is the bell. And pile 3 is the book. If you need to, you can go back to the piles, study them. You can also pause this video and meditate on each of the images. But once you have your image in mind, all you need to do is either select the cursor for the time and go straight to your pile, straight to that chapter, or you can go into the description or comments of this video, and there is going to be a timestamp link to your reading. So, are you ready? If so, let's go ahead and get started. Hello, pile 1, my phone pile. We are going to go ahead and get started by figuring out who you were in your past life, any important traits, any identifiers, anything like that. And to get started, we will be using the Mary Hanson Roberts Tarot deck. So, universe, what does pile 1 need to know about their past life? Who were they? Let's figure out all about them. All right, I'm pulling 3 cards here, and your first card is the 5 of Swords. This is a card about winning and losing, and because of the soldier on this card itself, I'm thinking that in your past life, you were some sort of soldier or warrior. Let's get your second card. Your second card is the Knight of Rods. This is a very passionate, very energetic card. It's also a bit of an adventurer, so I think you may have been a warrior or a soldier in distant or foreign lands. And your third card is the 6 of Cups. This is about nostalgia. It's about the past. It can also be about children. So for some of you, this could indicate that you may have been a child soldier, or that you may have been returning to a foreign country. Perhaps you were a child in that country that you returned to as a soldier. Maybe you were taken away as a slave. Maybe you were taken away from colonizers, something like that. But you were definitely returning to this foreign land, and it seems foreign to you, perhaps because you spent quite a lot of time away from it. But your return was very positive. In fact, all of these cards can be considered positive. Even this 5 of Swords card, it is a winning or a losing card, but upright, it means victory. This could be, for example, maybe someone who was taken away as like a child, as a slave, or made a child soldier, but they were able to get restationed in adulthood in their homeland, or maybe even they bought their freedom, something like that. So you were able to go home, you were able to perhaps reunite with your family, or just enjoy your homeland as it was. So it's actually pretty good news, all things considering, although there was definitely some bad news in the beginning. Let's pull 2 cards from the Fin de Siècle Kipper deck to see anything else that we need to know about who you were in your past life. What else does pile 1 need to know? What else does pile 1 need to know? All right, your first card is imprisonment. So yes, this does seem to be a confirmation that you were a child soldier, you were enslaved, and you had to spend some time away from your childhood home, and you were able to return to it later. Which is probably why returning was such a positive thing for you in your past life, because it also represented freedom. Your second oracle card here is Pathway. Now, when I first pulled this card, I don't normally read oracle cards reversed, but this card did come up reversed, and that really stuck out to me this time. What I am thinking is you had like a circuitous route. This Knight of Wands card, this adventuring card, this card where you are going to foreign lands, I think that when you were taken as a child, you ended up in a lot of places. And even though that turned out to be a good thing for you in the end, it definitely wasn't a choice you made. You may have had to victimize other people. This Five of Swords card, this winners or losers, even though you ultimately won your return home, you probably perpetuated a system of abuse and exploitation, and that was really disappointing to you. It stopped your ability to return home and enjoy life as it should have been. And I'm thinking, because this is such a negative life, and it is something that we recognize in our modern era, you may feel some embedded karmic guilt from that time, and you may even now be quite interested in social justice and progressive causes. And so the reason why you may be interested in those is because you want to right the wrongs that you were part of in your past life. Just remember that your past self isn't your current self. And so while it is good to be pro all of these causes, I don't want you to feel guilt for something your past self did. So what we are going to do now is we are going to figure out when this was. And we're going to go back to our Mary Hanson Roberts tarot deck to figure out when this may have been, to see if there are any clues. So universe, what clues do we have about when this particular past life was? What does pile 1 need to know about when this was? When was this? All right, your first of 3 cards is the 8 of Swords reversed. Upright, this is about a time of upright, it's about like oppression, being restricted. But reversed, this actually tells me that it may have been after the general abolition of slavery. So definitely after 1865, we're thinking the Gilded Age, the Industrial Age, perhaps when countries like the United States and Europe were still having colonies overseas, or like soft colonies, but there weren't like slaves. They weren't legally slaves. However, this spread does indicate that there was some element of slavery or oppression. So I am definitely thinking like colonies, like modern colonies from the 1800s to the 1900s. Now, the second card is the Nine of Cups reversed. So I am definitely thinking, because this is about not having your wishes fulfilled, this is probably going to be related to a dark time in your country or culture's history. So if you're an American, this probably does indicate either when there was still slaves, like at the tail end of that during the Civil War, or if you were part of a country where there's colonization, it would be during that time. if you were part of one of the last countries that had slavery, I think there was probably a few countries in Africa or Asia that had slaves up until probably like the early 1900s to like the mid 1900s. That would indicate that. But basically, think in terms of when your culture or your country of origin or the country that you adopted had a really dark past when it comes to slavery or colonization, and that is going to be the time period of your past life. So your third card is actually this card that I left in this deck because I really like the image. It's not really a tarot card, it's kind of like an oracle card, which is what I'm using it for, and it is all believers, but reverse, it's saying not believers. So I'm definitely getting this sense that you lived in a time where people were disillusioned or where people weren't following their morality. So because I have the most familiarity with American history, this would be, for example, you may have been a Christian, or you may have been enslaved by a Christian, but they weren't really a Christian. So there's definitely some level of hypocrisy, and I think you were witness to that. Now remember, you were a victim during this time. You weren't the main person who was perpetuating this. So when I'm seeing this hypocrisy of morals, it's not a hypocrisy of your morals, it's a hypocrisy of the morals around you. So let's go ahead and pull 2 cards from the Mystic Shaman Oracle deck to see if we can get any more clues about when you were. All right, universe, when was pile 1? It's past life. When was this? When was this? When was this time? What does pile 1 need to know about this time? All right, your first of 2 cards is the blade. So this indicates to me, because it's like a blunt edge tool, it's definitely either before like guns were used, or when it was a time like at the beginning of industrialization of your country. So for United States, again, it would be like before the 1860s or around that time. But think in your country's history, and overall I would recommend maybe just Googling or using ChatGPT to ask when your country or culture had slavery, when it was abolished, and when it entered the industrial era, because it is going to be just before that, or like when you're transitioning into that. That would be when your time period of your past life was. So the second card is the circle. So I am definitely getting like world trade here, and war. So war with the blade and the circle, I'm thinking world trade. So while I am saying it is before like industrialization, I'm not saying that your past self wasn't alive during industrialization, but it was definitely either at the beginning or your life didn't meet it until at the end, but definitely around that time period. So if you are an American, for example, your past self was probably born either in the early 1800s or the mid 1800s. And because I'm sensing a child, you would have obviously have had to have been born during a time of slavery or colonization. Now, it is possible for some of you that your past self was like perpetuating this systemization of violence, but that violence was abolished, and that's what I'm saying. So this is when you was during that period. So what we are going to do now is we are going to figure out what you did during this period. Any other things that we need to know? We have some ideas already, but let's get some more details. So universe, what did pile 1 do during this past life? Either directly related to what we're seeing or just any other interesting things that you would like them to know. Universe, what do you want pile 1 to know about what they did? What did pile 1 do during their life? What did pile 1 do during their life? All right. Your first card is the Nine of Swords reversed. This is a card about not being anxious. This is about a card of overcoming health problems. So what I am sensing is definitely you received your freedom. You had a very depressing, younger life. I mean, not a surprise if you were either taken as a slave or you were a victim of colonization. Some of you, I think this is probably only 1 or 2 who picked this pile. You may have been a victim of trade wars, but generally what I'm seeing is slavery or colonization. And anyway, during this life, you were definitely freed of a lot of your struggles. You were really liberated, not just physically and financially, but emotionally too, which is really good for you. So whatever you started out as, that was not how you ended up. The second card is the Sun. This is a really beautiful card. This is definitely a card of liberation because the child is just sitting on top of the horse. It's also a card of creativity. You can also interpret it to mean children. So especially with your earlier card, the Six of Cups, which is about nostalgia, but it's also featuring children. I think that your past self probably had children, and they had children either in their homeland or they had children and they were able to take their children to their homeland. So let's get your third card about what you did during this life. And the third card is the King of Wands. This is about being really in control of your passions. Definitely a sign that you were freed, but also that you ended up rising to a position of power, at least social power, if not direct financial or legal power. You were very influential. There is this poet in the United States, Phyllis Wheatley. I believe she got her freedom late in life. Her life was actually kind of sad, but she was one of the most important poets in history, even though she was born as an African American slave, and her life is really sad, but her name lives on in history, and that's what I am seeing for you. You may have been a person who was really, really important during the time. You were socially influential, or you left a legacy. So you definitely started out in a lowly position, but you did not end that way. So let's go ahead and pull the cards for some more cards, and we are going to pull the Psychic Tarot deck. I think before I said that this was the Psychic Tarot deck, these 2 cards are actually the Mystic Shaman deck. So I'm going to pull 2 cards from the Psychic Tarot deck now to figure out any more details about what you did during your life. So, universe, what did pile 1 do during their life? What else do they need to know about their past life? What else do they need to know? What does pile 1 need to know? All right. Your first card is Destiny. So some part of what you experienced was definitely destiny. I don't want to say that you deserved your colonization or slavery. It's probably more in terms of you deserved your freedom, you deserved a high social position, but because of the free will of others, your ability to claim that was thwarted. However, because you were always meant to have this high position, you were always meant to live in your homeland, you were always meant to have children, you were always meant to have a happy life, even the oppression of strong, systematic forces, entire countries, terrible movements like slavery or colonization, it couldn't stop what you were meant to be, and that was to have this brilliant and beautiful life of power. And I'm also getting the sense in the spread, even though you helped perpetuate this system in some manner when you were a slave or part of colonization, I don't think you did that once you had your freedom. I think that you were elevated in position. So let's get your second card from the Psychic Tarot deck, and it is New Beginnings. So I'm definitely seeing you were able to escape that. You were probably able to help other people escape that. Maybe you were someone like Harriet Tubman, not obviously Harriet Tubman herself, but someone like her, to where you helped slaves escape, you helped other people escape. And I think part of the reason why you were reincarnated during this time was for some of you, to be born in better circumstances, to where you weren't enslaved, where you weren't suffering from the same level of colonization. I know that people have a lot of problems with capitalism, but in the past 10 or 20 years, there has been a mass explosion in the reduction of poverty. So this has been a pretty good time to be born, where you escape like the worst parts of human suffering. So you were definitely meant to be born during this time to have a better childhood than you had in this past life, because I don't want to underscore how terrible your childhood, your teenage years were under this oppression, because it was actually quite terrible. Even though you ended quite well, your beginnings were just awful. It was true suffering, and it likely left a wound into your current lives, your future lives, stuff like that. So this desire to meet your destiny and to have like this new beautiful beginning, that's where it comes from. It is the karmic correction of your past. So let's go ahead and figure out how you died. So obviously everyone in this pile may have had pretty unique deaths, but we're looking for the general energies. So universe, how did pile 1 die? How did pile 1 pass? I'm hoping you died of old age, but we're gonna find out. All right, pile 1, how did pile 1 die? How did pile 1 die? All right, your first of 3 cards is the Hierophant reversed. This is about disorder. This is about being oppressed by outside forces, but I'm really getting the sense here is that you either died of old age or you died of a disease of an older age, like cancer, to where your body just kind of broke down. For some of you, your bodies might have broken down earlier than expected, probably because you had a really rough early childhood, so you may have had some injuries, or you may have had a lot of stress and a weakened heart, something like that. But basically your body broke apart, and I'm thinking it probably happened late middle age to when you were older. Your second card is the 9 of Pentacles. This is a card of wealth. This is a card of being comfortable. I do actually think you had the ability to retire or the ability to slow things down. So your body definitely broke down, but before that happened, you were able to live a life of leisure. You were able to live a life of ease. I do sense a little bit of loneliness here, so let's figure out what the third card is before I interpret that. The Eight of Rods reversed. This is about slowing things down, so definitely old age. What this loneliness and the Nine of Pentacles card could mean is that whoever you married to, they may have died first, or your children may have moved away, but I don't necessarily see this as a bad thing. I am seeing the natural progression of having a family and your family going on with their own lives. You were actually quite happy, so obviously if your spouse died before you, that would have been sad, but you would have been able to find a way to enjoy your golden years. You almost certainly had a pet who was someone that you socialized with on a daily basis. And I think you would have had wealth to leave to your children. Like, I'm not seeing you unsatisfied at the end of your life. So let's pull 2 cards from the Dark Mirror deck. This is the most negative deck that I have. It's going to give us like the really like negative details around your death to figure out if there's anything else we need to know. So, universe, what do we need to know about pile 1's death? What do we need to know about pile 1's death? What is there to be known? What do we need to know? All right, your first of 2 cards, the Temple of My Body. So I think you took really good care of your body. I think that your body did naturally break down when you were no longer able to do tasks independently. So I'm really getting the sense that you lived to quite an old age and just broke down because old bodies break down. Let's get your second card. This is the Queen of My World. I'm interpreting this card as positive in your circumstance. You just had like a wonderful end of life period. And I think that you honestly deserve that, considering your happiness was denied to you early in life. So perhaps the universe tried to conspire to free you from that with whatever opportunities were available. I think that you were probably a little bit self-directed. If you were a slave, for example, you may have escaped slavery. You may have built your wealth afterwards. If you were a victim of colonization, something like that. But once you were able to right the wrongs in your life, you were able to enjoy quite a few years and died a pretty natural death. I like seeing that. Because your death wasn't traumatic, for some of you, you may not even remember this life. You may not have dreams of this life. It seems like most people, when it comes to their past lives, they only really remember the most traumatic deaths. So this life in particular is probably one you don't remember, but you may have this overwhelming sense of doing the right thing and making sure that people are free, that they're not oppressed by systematic forces, and that's where it's coming from. It is coming from this life. So the last thing that we are going to do today is figure out why this past life matters now. I think we have some clues as to why, but let's figure out if there's anything else that you need to know. So we are going to go back to the Mary Hanson Roberts Tarot deck to figure out why this past life matters to you now, to the universe, something like that. Why it's important the universe decided to tell you about this life today in this reading, because you probably had many lives for the universe to choose from. So, universe, why is this life important to them today? Why did they need to know about it? Why was it important? What's important about this life? All right, your first card is the King of Swords. So there are a few possibilities here, but I am sensing that your ability to gain your freedom around these really terrible systematic forces, it left an impression on your soul. And you're probably going to be able to use that now to improve your current life, but It'll probably help you to fight injustice in this life, either through direct activism or the ability to vote correctly in elections, or advocate for people who are suffering around you. The second card is the Queen of Cups reverse. This is about being emotionally upset. Because these cards are both court cards, it means people specifically. And I do think it indicates people outside of you, but also yourself. And I think the depression that your past life experienced, it's definitely something you could learn from. And I don't want to belittle any of your current sad feelings, your current mental illnesses if you have them, any depressive periods, but I think that it is important for your soul to know that you're actually capable of a lot of amazing things, and that you are capable of having a better life than you have now. So if you are currently struggling, for those of you, the universe wants you to know that your life can get better. And even if it feels like it can't get better right now or immediately, it will. And there's a good chance that once you do transition, once you do recover, you are going to have like a really long period of happiness. Like, this life had quite a few years of oppression, but the majority of their life would have been quite positive, quite joyful. And I think that's going to be the case for you. Probably in the near future, your life is going to turn a corner. If you're not depressed, but you don't feel as happy as you could be, it's going to get a lot happier. And if you are depressed, that is going to fall away. You are going to be in a better mental state of mind. So your third tarot card here is the World. So I think that this life had significance. In the past, I think you may have been influential, but I do think that you were kind of like a cog in the machine. The lives that you affected may have been the people you knew around you. You may have had like a legacy. Phyllis Wheatley, for example, people probably think, oh, she's just a poet, she's not important. She's actually quite important to American literature. People study her poems in schools. They are influenced by her thought, inspired by what she was able to accomplish. And I think that your past life had an outsized effect on the world in some way. And I think that karmic connection to that past life that you have, you're going to be able to use that in this life to change the world for the positive. So whatever injustice that you see, whatever oppression that you see, you're going to be able to heal that in your own way. It may be directly, but it may just be influenced. But understand that if you apply yourself, even if it is just encouraging other people to vote a specific way or to stand up for a particular person, it is like a ripple in a small pond. That ripple is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And what you choose to do, it is going to change lives. Don't assume that your small influences are small. They're actually quite big. You're actually quite powerful in your own way. So the last thing we're going to do is pull 2 cards from the Sacred Destiny Oracle to figure out if there's anything else that you need to know about this past life and why it matters now. So, universe, why does this past life matter now? 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 All right, your first of 2 cards is Voyage. So your past life definitely went on a journey. Your current life is probably going through its own journey, either physically, mentally, emotionally, but I think that overall this is a spiritual journey. Your probably multiple lives, because there may have been at least one life in between, one incarnation between this past life and your current one, perhaps more. It really depends on your particular age right now, but your past self has gone through a lot of soul lessons, and that's going to continue. Like, this past life is going to have influences on your future lives. There are a lot of lessons to be learned, and you're probably thinking, okay, how am I going to have lessons from this past life? It already happened. I died from that life. I'm on this one. Remember how I said that your past life had an influence and a legacy? That legacy is echoing today. You are encountering the effects of that life today. So even if you yourself can't identify that effect, your soul is definitely connected to it. Your soul is definitely attracted to it. So you are actually interacting with some sort of direct influence from your past life. And that's pretty exciting, actually. And that may be true even if your current life is in no way related to your past life. For example, some of you, this past life may have been one of your ancestors. Sometimes people are reincarnated into the same family line. But I think for some of you, that may not be the case. You may just be encountering the legacy of that life. But there's definitely some sort of relationship between this life and your current life. You're interacting with it in some way. And then your last card is leadership. So I definitely get this sense of leadership in your past life. You came to a position of power. You were probably, because you were either a soldier or part of some colonial force, you probably got a position of respect. And that taught you things at a soul level, and that is something that you are going to do today. You are going to be a leader. You're either going to be a leader directly with subordinates, or you are going to influence people with your good character. But this leadership is important because the leadership that you have is going to be one that is morally upright. You aren't going to oppress your subordinates. You are going to be a true leader. You are going to be a good person, and your subordinates are going to see that. They aren't going to feel like they're your slave. They're not going to feel like they're oppressed. They are going to respect you, and they are actually going to perpetuate a new system of true mentorship and menteeship. So part of your legacy is correcting that imbalance. You are reducing inequality. You are making people more equal, even when they are in situations where someone is an authority over them. So part of you becoming a leader in this life is you continuing your past self's legacy. So pile one, I hope this was really enlightening. Your past self definitely had a really unfortunate beginning, but it ended quite beautifully, and you had quite a happy end. And it seems to have a really important effect on the world and on your soul. And this is all good news for you going forward. I hope it will help you. Even if you don't remember this past life specifically, I hope that you are able to identify where that past life is at work in the world and in your soul. So if you like this reading, be sure to like the video, and subscribe for more. I really hope to see you again. See you again, my soul friends. Hello, pile 2, my bell pile. We are going to go ahead and get started with the Mary Hanson Roberts deck to figure out who you were in your past life. So We are going to pull 3 cards for that to figure out any identifying traits, anything important that the universe thinks you should know about how to identify who this person was. So, universe, who was pile 2 in their past life? Who was pile 2 in their past life? Who was pile 2? All right, your first card is the Six of Cups. So this is about the past. This is also about children or first love. So this is perhaps indicating that you were a child or that you were someone who was experiencing their first love. And those are traits that would happen to any past life. So this could perhaps be an indication that this particular past life that we're going to be talking today in this reading is actually a short one. So let's get the next card for more clues. The Eight of Rods reversed. This is about a slowing of slowing things down, maybe a full stop. I'm definitely getting the sense that your past life, this particular one, didn't last very long. You died as a child or a teenager or in some relation to your first love. Now let's get your second card, or your third card, I'm sorry. Your third card is the Devil reversed. This is about overcoming oppression, overcoming bad temptations. Overall, I'm getting the sense that, actually, no, what I'm getting with this card. So a lot of people, especially if you're dealing with Christianity, but I think in general, believe that children, before that they're the age of majority or when they're really young, they're innocent, so they automatically go to heaven. So what I am sensing in this spread is that you definitely died as a child or perhaps a teenager. Some of you may have reached adulthood but perhaps died a virgin. And because you lived basically a faultless life, or you were really, really young, so you didn't have the opportunity to commit any sins or anything like that, you basically automatically went to heaven. You had a pretty faultless life is basically what I'm sensing here. So this is probably sad news, but because we are dealing with past lives and most of our past lives were before modern sanitary conditions, before modern medicine, before the reduction of violence, we probably actually had quite a few lives that ended very early. So let's figure out more about this. So I'm going to pull 2 cards from the Fendi Siècle Kipper deck to figure out what else we can about this past life. Universe, what happened in pile 2's past life? Like, who were they? Any traits? Why this particular childhood past? What's important about this one that they need to know? What's important to know about this life? So the first card is main female. This can mean a few things. For some of you, it indicates that you were like a girl, even if you are a guy in this life, and this past life that you were a girl. It could also indicate that your mother was an important person, or that you fell in love with a woman. But there is definitely this indication of feminine energy that is really important to this life. It's absolutely crucial. Especially there is a rose in this card, and roses often indicate love, and we definitely see white flowers, which could indicate death in some cultures. White is often what they wear to funerals. It can also mean innocence. So this is definitely some further indication and confirmation of what I was seeing in the earlier cards. Let's get some more details. The second card here is expectation. So this expectation card, makes me think that you are waiting for your lover. So, um, in some decks, this Six of Cups card features a boy giving a flower to the girl, and we see this flower here, and we see this girl waiting. I am definitely getting the impression that in your past life you had some sort of love story. So this could indicate like a really young childhood romance. But for most of you, it does indicate like preteen or teenage years, maybe young adulthood, but you were waiting for your first love or you were hoping to get married. I'm really getting the sense that there must have been someone that you had your eyes on and who perhaps had eyes on you or made you believe that they had eyes on you and you were waiting to get married, but something stopped that marriage. Something stopped that relationship, and that probably has echoes across all your lives. It may make you feel restless in future relationships and relationships now. You may feel that something is going to intervene when it comes to your love story. Some of you may also have hang-ups about sleeping with other people. You may be afraid to sleep with other people, or you may be, I guess the correct word for this would be slutty, but you definitely have some sort of hang-ups or um, unhealthy relationship towards sex, and it would have come from this past life in some way. So what we are going to do now is figure out when this was. So let's go back to the Mary Hanson Roberts Tarot deck to figure out when this particular life was. So, universe, when was this life? When was this particular life? When was this life? All right, your first of three cards here is the Seven of Wands. This is a time of struggle. I do think that you would have been in a good position because Seven of Rods is about someone being under attack, but they have the high ground. I think that you would have been part of an upper class, perhaps even a nobility class. And because this is a child that dies early or a teenager, someone who dies young, definitely before modern medicine, and because of this nobility, that I'm sensing here, it would have been maybe before the industrial era. Let's figure out some more cards here. What is the second card? The Emperor. This is another nobility card in my mind. You may have been like an actual noble, not just someone rich or upper class, but perhaps someone from a royal family, maybe even part of an empire. Some of you may have been part of like the Roman Empire or maybe like one of the Chinese empires during a period of immense power and privilege. You would have been part of that privileged class, but your position wouldn't have been secure. For example, in ancient Rome, the families often fought with each other. There was a lot of intrigue, and people died. So I do think that you were in a time where you were always worried that you could die early because of war. So not just like issues of not having adequate medicine or like cleanliness standards, you were actively afraid of being killed. Let's get the third card here. And we have the Page of Pentacles. I'm really getting the sense that this is particularly you. This was you in being able to inherit wealth or being in a good position, and you never inherited wealth. You maybe had like a good dowry if you were going to get married. You would have been a really attractive candidate to someone else, but I'm definitely getting the sense that you didn't have your own wealth. It was wealth through your family. So overall, I'm getting the sense that you were in a time period when there were nobles, and I think definitely in like an empire time. So if you're like in the West, it would definitely be like ancient Rome. It could be one of the later empires, one of the colonialization empires, but I'm really kind of getting the sense before that. Maybe even during the Middle Ages, there wasn't like a particular empire then, but um, maybe related to the like Holy Roman Empire like situation, which I think was German, and they just called themselves that. They weren't like an empire in the sense that we think today, um, but definitely before modern medicine. So let's pull the next two cards, which is from the Mystic Shaman Oracle. Let's see what else we can figure out about when this was. Universe, when was this past life? When was this past life? When was this past life? I suddenly got the impression that for some of you, you may have been in one of the German princely states. That's a possibility. I don't think that's true for all of you, but for some of you, you may have been in the German lands. Because they had a bunch of like kingdoms, I think. All right, your first of two cards here is Beauty Way. So definitely a time of beauty. This wouldn't have been during the like Dark Ages. Obviously, the Dark Ages is an unfair like name for that period, but it would have been a time of like high culture. So ancient Rome, the Renaissance, um, maybe during one of the, if you're from like, if this past life was in China or something like that, during one of their high periods, but you're definitely looking for a time when things were going quite well economically and culturally. So you weren't in a time of decline, which means that your family was, yes, they were fighting for control, but there wasn't fear that everything was going to collapse around them. It was really from other people that you were afraid of, perhaps the peasants or other families. Now, the second card here is Thunder. With this Thunder card, I'm definitely getting the sense of natural disasters. This could be a sign for some of you that you may have been part of the, because I'm kind of thinking like Vikings here, or like the like the Norse. But when I'm thinking the Norse, for those of you who that's resonating with, I'm not actually thinking of the Viking period. I'm thinking of when they started to consolidate. Probably when they started. That's about the time when they became Christian, like in the 900s to like the 1300s. So that's another clue. The particular time period that you're looking for in this past life is going to be a time when there was like really strong distinctions of class. There would have been noble classes, there would have been royals, there would have been empires or a consolidation of kingdoms or city states. You would have like had an inheritance, but it wouldn't be yours. So I'm definitely thinking like a kind of like a patriarchy or like family leaders to where they control the wealth of all their family members. It's not just like oppressing the daughters. It's really there is someone in control of all of the wealth, and they determine where that wealth is going to go. This could have been an influence on your first love. Maybe it would have been like a Romeo and Juliet situation, or it could have been like that. And for some of you, you may not have been able to enter into that relationship as easily because of the family politics, and you had to please your clan leader, your family leader, in order to agree. So definitely a time of high culture, a time of wealth. Most people, their past lives tend to be related to their own cultures or their geographic region. It can sometimes be outside of that, but not as often. You can probably have an idea of when this would be if this is a past life that you have memories of by anything you're really, really interested in. If you have like a bizarre interest in a particular culture that isn't yours, it could be a sign that you had a past life during that time. And if it fits with the qualities that you're seeing in the spread so far, your past life could have been during that period. For example, if you're really interested in Korean culture, it could have been when there are like three kingdoms consolidated. I don't remember exactly when that was, maybe in the 900s or the 1300s. Either when it became Goguryeo or Choson. I don't know much about Korean history, but something like that. You are looking for a period of consolidation, political consolidation, a period of nobility, and that is when you lived. Especially if children wouldn't have had a say in who they married, which I believe is the case for most past cultures that we know about. That's when you would have lived. All right, so let's do a question on what you did during this life. Anything important for you to know? Any identifiers for this past life about what you did? So we're going to go back to the Mary Hanson Roberts deck and pull 3 cards to figure out what you did during this life. What this life seems to be, this short life. What you did during this short life. What happened during this life? What happened? All right, your first card is the 9 of Swords upright. Okay, during this life, you were quite depressed. You had your dreams and hopes really like squashed. You may have had health problems. You may have even been locked away. I'm thinking maybe you were forced to basically never leave home. You were oppressed far more than would be normal for your gender, for your position. You suffered in ways which weren't normal for that particular past life context. So the second card here is the 3 of Swords. I kind of expected this card to appear at some points in this tarot reading today. This is the heartbreak card. This is the card where a romance is ended. And here with these 3 swords, I am definitely seeing an interloper. With this 9 of Swords card, this basically being locked away is what I'm sensing here. I'm not sensing like imprisonment, but being kind of like locked away in your own home. I am sensing that a family member may have been responsible. So perhaps this family leader, this clan leader, your parents, they didn't want you to have this romance. So they prevented you from interacting with this person, interacting with their family members, basically stopping any possibility that you could end up in that relationship. The third card is the King of Swords reversed. So there are a few possibilities here. I don't see this card as being you at all. I don't see this card representing something like some aspect of your personality. I see this as some sort of patriarchal figure being oppressive, and they're acting illogically. So sometimes arranged marriages are meant for the good of the children involved, the teenagers involved. They're good matches. They end up liking each other. Everything is on the up and up for the time and place it is. This person, this family member that oppressed you in this past life, their decision didn't make any sense. It doesn't make any social sense. It doesn't make any financial sense. It makes no sense at all. And that is probably one of the reasons why you would have felt so bad, why you would have felt so oppressed, why it would have seemed so alien to what your situation should have been. I am thinking some sort of personal grudge. Maybe this family leader was trying to get a better deal, but people in the community around you would have looked at their treatment of you as morally abhorrent. So earlier in the spread, I indicated that this person, this past life of yours, went to heaven, or like some sort of conception of that. They were innocent, and you were innocent of any wrong. The person that is oppressing you, this family member, it could be for some of you, maybe like a local political leader that's trying to control your family. But I'm mostly sensing it is a family member who has control over the children and the other minor family members. But this person was being petty. Everybody in the community around you recognized that this person was being petty. They recognized that you were being wronged. So let's pull 2 cards from the Psychic Tarot deck to figure out some more about this situation or about this life in general. Universe, what was happening during this life? What happened during this life? What are some events that happened during this life? What happened during this life? All right, your first card here is heartache and loss. I'm guessing you sense a theme here, but yes, you definitely were in love with someone. It wasn't just like an arranged marriage that fell through. You were truly in love with someone. The community either knew that you were in love with this person, or they recognized that it was a good match, and you lost out. You were unable to be with this person even though you truly love them, even though they were a good match. This isn't like a situation where where you fell in love with someone you could have never been with. This would have been a person you could have definitely been with. There should have been no obstacles to it. So I'm definitely thinking Romeo and Juliet here. The 2 families of Verona were basically social equals. There would have been no reason for Romeo and Juliet not to have been able to get together, except for the grudge between their fathers. And that is what I am sensing here. You were truly in love with someone, or you were really, really hoping to enter into this relationship because you felt you could have loved this person. Although I'm really sensing romance in the spread, not just an arranged marriage, and you lost them. And that destroyed you emotionally. That really depressed you. That really made you feel as if your life was over. So let's get the second card from this deck, Balance. So when I first saw this card, I wasn't thinking so much of the name. I was thinking of the angel. And I'm definitely getting the sense with that dagger in that cup of maybe suicide. Maybe you tried to balance out your terrible conditions by killing yourself. That way you could start a new life. Even though I kind of sense that in this card, suicide doesn't seem to be accepted in pretty much any religion. So it's possible, if you didn't directly kill yourself, that your circumstances led you to losing your health and you just kind of wasted away. But I also think with this balance card, that who you were in a relationship with or who you wanted to be in a relationship with, they also died early too. You weren't the only one who died early. So I'm thinking the possibility is that this spread indicates some sort of important soul tie, like a soulmate or a twin flame. This was a life where you were meant to be together, perhaps the first life where you get together, or the only life where you were unable to be together, and that left a deep wound. And as soon as you died, or they died, you both kind of died together. You were unable to accept living in a world without each other, so your souls just kind of left your bodies. Um, I'm kind of getting the sense that neither one of you married. Neither one of you entered into a new relationship. You left this life together in order so you could enter the next life together. So even though this family member was trying to control your life, ultimately they were unable to do that because it just didn't happen. Unfortunately, the end of your life was quite heartbreaking, but you ended up spending at least part of your afterlife together with your soulmate because you died around the same time. It's possible that some of you may have gone into, like in Europe, for example, sometimes noble women would become nuns, and that was a perfectly like acceptable life path. Some of you may have done something like that wherever you were in the world, whatever time frame you were in. You may have made it to where you were unable to marry anyone, and it was like how you got back to them. So for those of you who didn't die, you may have entered into a position to where you couldn't marry anyone else going forward. So let's go ahead and figure out how you died. We're going to pull some cards from the Mary Hanson Roberts deck to figure out how this short life of yours ended. If we can get any more clues about that. Universe, how did this short life end? How did this short life end? How did this life end? How did they die? All right, your first of 3 cards here is the 10 of Cups reversed. This is about not being emotionally fulfilled. This is about not having kids. This is about not getting married. Definitely a confirmation of what we saw before. I think for some of you, I don't think this is the case for all of you, but I think for some of you, perhaps you did sleep with this person and then one of you got pregnant, and then that woman died in childbirth, and that may have led the other person to die of despair, basically. The second card is the 9 of Pentacles, not dying alone. I'm kind of getting this sense that you may have tried to run off together. Some of you may have maybe escaped your imprisonment, maybe because one of you was pregnant, and so you wanted to escape before that was discovered. And after the woman died in childbirth, the other person died alone but died together. You weren't in a good financial situation. The third card is the 3 of Pentacles. Okay, I'm really seeing it in this spread. I am seeing this sense that you and your partner were supposed to get together, or you wanted to get together, and one of the family members, one of the leaders of your families, prevented that, and so you couldn't get together. You were locked away. Your love story was stopped, but I think you may have met in secret because you were so heartbroken. Maybe even the community or the families that you belong to tried to help you with this. They tried to thwart this person because they supported you. You really did have quite a lot of support in the community, and they wanted to help you. And this led to the woman in the relationship getting pregnant, but they died in childbirth, and the other person died alone after that happened, and you were unable to be a family together. There was this attempt to create a family, but it didn't happen, and I think that left a wound on you. It is possible that you may have had like a spirit baby. I don't really like this topic. I don't like the whole thing about it, but the basic idea is that some of your family members reincarnate with you, and if you have a baby and you abort it or you miscarry, it'll be reborn into the next pregnancy or reborn somewhere in your family. And I do sense that this baby that you lost has tried to come back to you again and again throughout lifetimes. They have tried to be your child. Maybe that has happened. Maybe you are currently together with this soulmate in this spread and you have that baby. If you sense that is true, that is what is happening here. There is this sense that that you and this person have been trying to start this family and you've been trying to perpetuate it. But because of this karmic ties, I am sensing that this person that tried to prevent you from being together with the person that you loved, they probably reincarnated with you at the same time. They may be the person that is trying to stop you. You may have had support around you trying to prevent the person that's stopping you, but I am definitely sensing that this is a soulmate and a soul family situation to where you reincarnate together at least this one time, or you're meant to reincarnate in a future life, but you're really meant to be together and your soul is trying so hard to be with this other person and to be with the baby that you and your partner lost. So let's pull 2 cards from the Dark Mirror deck. This is the most negative deck I own, so this will give us some more insight into the negative aspects of this past life. So, universe, what happened in this past life? How about this death? What else do we need to know about it? What happened? What happened? How did this person die? All right, your first of 2 cards is envious gluttony. Envy, gluttony. You really, really wanted each other. You wanted each other so bad that you were willing to do whatever it took to be together. It's possible, and actually, I do think this is the case, especially because this is the like an older time period, that your male family member who tried to stop your relationship tried to marry you off to someone else, and this person was so jealous of your relationship to your soulmate that they tried to stop it. They tried to hunt you down, and that chase may have been why this person had a miscarriage or had a stillbirth or the baby died. It's possible that the woman died alone because maybe the men involved got into a fight and killed each other. But there's definitely a lot of envy, a lot of trying to steal people's partners. There's also the sense that maybe the person who was left over, maybe the woman ate something that made her get sick and made her die in childbirth, because it's not always safe to eat certain things. It's possible the man, after the woman died, basically drunk and ate himself to death. But there's definitely deaths of despair, violent deaths, envy. It's really like a melodramatic love story is what I'm seeing. And the last card for this question is blinded to pain. So I'm definitely getting the sense these things in this card are flies, which makes me think of like decay, food that's spoiling. I think what happened, it's pretty specific in this spread, is you and your partner escaped. You were going to raise the child together, but uh, somebody chased you. Either the woman's new partner that they were supposed to get married to chased them, or a male family member of the woman that the guy was supposed to marry. This is getting pretty complicated. I almost feel like I need a chart, but uh, the woman died, I think, first. The woman died first, is what happened. The pregnant woman died first. Her and her baby died first, and then the man was so in despair after he was all by himself that he may have eaten himself to death. It could be the woman, but I'm definitely getting the sense that one partner ate and drank themselves to death because they were basically rotting from the inside. Um, it could have been the woman that ate herself to death. It's really hard to tell, but definitely the baby died. I don't think that the woman, if she did die last, that she killed herself and then left the child to fend for itself. The baby would have either been miscarried, it would have been stillborn, or it would have died shortly afterwards. And whatever parent was left, they died alone, sadly. Um, I do think it is possible that the person that was left never returned to their own family. I think they would have been too sad to do that because they wouldn't have wanted to get married. They definitely died of a broken heart, is what I'm saying. So, a really sad fate for both of you. The reason why you died together is because the other person either ate themselves to death or drunk themselves to death, or they died in connection with this person, or it's I think it could be different for all of you, but that general situation is what happened for everyone in this spread. You guys ran off, somehow you died, and the person that was left died by themselves. So, the last thing that we are going to talk about today is why all this matters now, why this particular past life is something you needed to learn about, and what that means for you going forward. Obviously, we get the sense of a soul family, of a soulmate or a twin flame, and a spirit baby, but is there anything else that you need to know about this life? So, back to the Mary Hanson Roberts Tarot deck. What does pile 2 need to know about this past life? Why does it matter? Why does this life matter? All right, the first card is the King of Pentacles. Earlier, I pulled the Page of Pentacles for you, and I saw that as you, about you inheriting something. I kind of see this King of Pentacles as you now. I see that you are coming into your own independence in this life, your own financial independence, your own ability to make your own decisions for yourself. So, you are going to be in a situation in this life where you have more control over your future, but you may feel that that's not true. You may feel as if you are being oppressed by your family. They're trying to convince you to live a certain way, but they don't actually have any legal control over you. You actually do have the ability to just walk away from their influence, but you are so heartbroken over the past and you are so influenced by them that you don't see that. But I do think you are going to see that going forward. Okay, the next card is the Two of Cups. I think that you are going to have an initial breakup with your soulmate. You are going to meet them at some point in your life, and you're going to feel like you can't be together. And it's going to be because of this soul family influence where this person also reincarnates and tries to stop you. And it's going to be up to you, because you do have the power to make it happen, to push past those obstacles in order to be together with this person. Now, the third card is the Six of Rods. This is a card of glory. This is a card of being recognized. I kind of get the sense of marriage here. Like your relationship to your soulmate is legally recognized. It's legally protected. Um, so what I'm sensing with these 3 cards, why it matters now, is you are going to break that karmic cycle. You are going to break that karmic connection that this person has over you. You are going to claim your life. You are going to get over this struggle. So I think that you are going to have a small lesson, because this is a 2 of Cups card. This is a minor arcana card. That means it's a smaller problem. This indicates that you are going to have some sort of obstacle to your soulmate, but you are going to overcome that and you're going to get together. Now, for some of you, you may have married the wrong person to start with, and you may end up getting divorced in order to marry your soulmate. So that is a possibility. But I think in general, you are going to get together with your soulmate, and you're going to get together because you are going to claim your life. You are going to claim your independence. So the last thing we're going to do is pull 2 cards from the Sacred Destiny Oracle deck to figure out what else we need to know about why this matters. Why does this life matter to pile 2 now? Why does this life matter to pile 2 now? Why does this matter? All right. The first of 2 cards is transformation. You are going to be transformed by your current experiences. The butterfly also has a connection to spirituality. So this is a sign that perhaps doing a past life regression or guided meditations on your past lives, or really wrestling with your shadow self, your hangups around romance and relationships, it will help you to get to a position where you aren't influenced by other people, and you're going to be able to make decisions for yourself when it comes to your relationships. And the second card is power. Earlier, I pulled the Thunder card, which made me think of the post-Viking period and the consolidation, the political consolidation of all the tribes in Scandinavia. But while there is an echo of that, I kind of see this as a different card here. I don't see it directly related to this one. I see this as your power. So this person who prevented your relationship in the past, they are kind of like a storm that rolled in, but that storm is going to roll out and things are going to get sunny again. Right now I'm thinking of the 3 of Swords card. One interpretation that I love about this card is that it is about clarity, and the reason why it is about clarity is that the storm is washing away all uncertainty. It's washing away all the illusions. It's washing away all the misconceptions. And I think that the more you figure out about your past life, the more that you wrestle with your relationship issues, the more that you are going to be in a situation where you are fully in control of your mind. Because I do think that you have been influenced, you have destructive thoughts, and you need to wrestle with those thoughts. You need to take back your mind from this person who is brainwashing you, who's thinking you don't have control, who is making you think that you don't deserve your soulmate. And you are definitely going to be free of them. So pile 2, your past life, it's a very personal past life. I'm not seeing anything related to any grand historical stories. It's very personal to you. It's possibly because you died quite young, probably because you had a child late teens to early 20s, or your partner had a child, although I'm really getting the sense in this spread that you were the woman in the relationship, even if you're a guy now. So yes, this was a really personal story to you. You may not be able to like look at events in history and feel connected to it when it comes to this past life. In order to really connect with this past life, you're going to have to do a past life regression on it, or you are going to have to perhaps read romance stories or poems from the time period that you suspect this life was in order to connect with that, because it's so personal that you really have to make a personal connection to it if you want to learn lessons from that. But if you're not into past life regressions, that's perfectly fine. You could do modern therapy on any relationship issues you have. You could do journaling. You could do meditation. You could just wrestle with the issues that you're having. But I do have full confidence that if you're not already in a relationship with your soulmate, you are going to find them in your life. You are going to get together, and your relationship is going to be legally recognized and legally protected. And whoever would prevent you from getting together, they're not going to have power over you. And I want you to take that away with you as you think about this reading. So a really interesting reading. I hope it will help you going forward in your life. If you resonated with this reading, be sure to like it and subscribe to my channel for more, because I really hope to see you again. See you again, my soul friends. Hello, pile 3, my book pile. We are going to go ahead and get started by asking who you were exactly in your past life. Any important traits, anything the universe wants you to know about your past life. And we're going to pull 3 cards from the Mary Hanson Roberts tarot deck. So, universe, what does pile 3 need to know about their past life? What does pile 3 need to know? What does pile 3 need to know? All right, your first card is the Queen of Swords. So this Swords card does indicate that you were a pretty important intellectual figure, or you were part of some sort of scholastic career. And since this is a Queen of Swords, this may be an indication that you were actually a woman in this field, or that you were somehow unusual. If it wasn't your gender being out of place, it was some sort of other aspect. Maybe you were a minority, maybe you were doing something strange, but there's something unique about you, something unique about your identity in your past life when it comes to pursuing this this intellectual career of yours. It could also be an indication of a different religion. The second card is the Eight of Cups reversed. This is about a return, like an emotional return. And with the combination of the Queen of Swords, this could be a sign that you actually became so comfortable with your intellectual career that you actually decided to return to things that you left in the past. This could be perhaps an indication that you did pursue an intellectual career, but that you eventually decided to perhaps have a family. For some of you, this could mean that you maybe were like a nun or part of some sort of clerical position, but then you decided to perhaps leave that and actually get married and have kids. But we're going to figure out a little bit more about your traits to see if that's correct or not. The third card is the Queen of Pentacles reversed. So I'm actually definitely going to say that you didn't have kids, and your emotional return was really about something else. It's not about money, it's not about kids. There is something else here. You may have had some pretty drastic life changes in this past, and it caused you to give up things that really, really mattered to you, but you found a way to return to it at some point in your life. So let's go ahead and pull 2 cards from the Vindi Siècle Kipper deck in order to find out what other traits we need to know about this past life. Universe, what else do we need to know about pile 3's past life? What else do we need to know? What else needs to be known? All right, your first of 2 cards here is community. You are definitely part of a rather close-knit community. So maybe this 8 of Cups emotional return card could be a sign that you actually return to a community of your birth, or maybe with this Queen of Swords card, you actually were a bit of a hermit for a while, maybe a monastic, something to where you were away from other people, but then you decided to change your life and be around a more social situation. Sometimes people call the Queen of Swords card really, really harsh, even though she's very logical. Even upright, she can be a little bit emotionally cold, and perhaps that was the case for you. Perhaps you didn't value things of emotional worth, you didn't value your social relationships because you were so focused on your intellectual pursuits that you just didn't make time for that. But I do think that you eventually did return to that, and you did have a satisfying social life. You were able to fulfill your emotional needs. So the next card is the mature woman card. So you definitely got to a point in life where you were perhaps older, or you were considered responsible for something. I think this can also indicate that you maybe got to an older age without having kids, because that's definitely something I'm seeing in your card. And even though you weren't like a mother, you were still like a motherly figure or a leader figure within your community. And I think that was hard won through your intellectual pursuits. Again, I'm thinking of, especially in Europe, of nuns who eventually became, they might have been called like abbotesses, or basically they were like the most important and the most powerful social position sometimes in a community. And even though they weren't a man, for example, they were this highly educated woman, probably from a noble background, but at least had some special training. And because of that, she was able to really take control of a very large social group. So what we are going to do now is figure out when you were. So when this particular past life that we're talking about lived. So let's figure out what that could be. I'm definitely thinking it may have been before the industrial era, just because there is probably this tension to where there wasn't full equality of rights, or that there wasn't a lot of diversity. So anyone who didn't fit that initial mold would look really, really weird and out of place. So let's go ahead and pull 3 cards from the Mary Hanson Roberts Tarot deck to figure out when you were, when this life was. Universe, when was this past life? When was this past life? When was this life? All right, your first card is the Devil reversed. This is an indication about not being oppressed. It indicates maybe a more innocent time. I'm kind of getting the sense that this would have been during a time when there wouldn't have been like a really strong authority. So it would have been a time where there wasn't like an empire, where there wasn't a really strong centralized force. So, for example, the Dark Ages or the Middle Ages, where there hasn't yet been a lot of centralization of powers. It could also be a time of a lot of freedom. So perhaps when a country had earned their freedom from another country. So let's get the next card. The next card is the Page of Pentacles. This is an indication of, often the Page card in tarot decks is considered like a female card, the Knight is considered like a younger man card, and the Page of Pentacles is considered a younger woman card. In this case, I am sensing that it may have been at the beginning of a mercantile expansion. So maybe like the Middle Ages towards the Renaissance. It could be around the Silk Road. I don't think that you would have been directly involved with trade in the sense that you may be thinking about, but you may be tangentially related. And one of the reasons why I don't think that you would be directly related to trade is because there is this community element. Now, it could be that you actually were on the Silk Road or on some sort of trade route, but then you eventually decided to stay in one place, and you didn't decide to have a family, but you did decide to be embedded in a community. So let's get your third tarot card here. The third tarot card here is the Six of Pentacles. This indicates giving back. This indicates charity. It could indicate putting someone in debt, but I don't think that's the case for you here because there's this strong community element. So I am sensing quite a lot of charity. So I do think perhaps you had a little bit of wealth, but instead of growing that wealth and becoming like this amazing businesswoman, you decided to stay in one place and invest that wealth back into your community. So let's go ahead and pull two cards from the Mystic Shaman Oracle deck to figure out a little bit more about this time when your past life would be. Because I'm still not getting like a more narrow time frame yet. So universe, when was this past life? When was this past life? When was this past life? When was this life? Of course, this lack of centralization could just indicate, because I do know that in the Middle Ages and even up until the Industrial Era, the mercantile class, those who were traders often, and when I say traders, I mean like merchants, not like somebody who's betraying people, but they really didn't fit the mold of society. They weren't peasants, they weren't clerics, they weren't nobility. They really existed outside that structure, and because they were able to grow wealth, they were able to live lives sometimes better than the nobility was able to live. So that could also be what's happening here. And sometimes the mercantile families, they would actually educate their daughters quite well because they had the money to do that. So let's get the next card here. And this is the lower world. So I'm definitely getting the sense of like seediness, like some sort of moral corruption or something below what is seen. I think this actually does confirm the fact that you may have been a merchant. And so while some of you may have been involved in like a nunnery or like something like that, that's a possibility. It could indicate that you were either a peasant or you were part of the merchant class, and therefore you weren't automatically respected. And that could be part of the reason why I pulled the Queen of Swords card here. I mean, yes, you may have been a woman during this time, but that probably wouldn't have been the only thing. For example, maybe you were a peasant who joined a nunnery, or you ended up somehow working for a trading organization. And whether you were a woman or a man, you were starting at a lower position, but somehow you were able to rise yourself within that ranking. And the way that you raised yourself was definitely through money, and you were able to invest that money back into a community. So let's get the next card. This is the Arrow. I did pull it reversed, and I was really focused on that. I normally don't think about oracle cards in reverse, but in this case, I really thought about it. You definitely weren't involved when it comes to war or military struggles. You were really about trade. You were really about doing things for other people. You were really about doing good. This could also be a sign that you kind of snuck between military lines to trade goods with your country's enemy. You weren't somebody who wanted to fight others. You really wanted to have a better relationship with them. Um, so that's what I'm saying. It's a little bit weak on this card. I really feel a lot of softness on this card, so I don't want you to take this card too seriously. But overall, what I'm sensing is that you seem to live at a time of disorganization or decentralization, when money was starting to become more important. So I'm really sensing the transition between a feudal society to a more complex economy, um, uh, the Renaissance, something like that. Not quite the industrial era. I don't really sense the industrial era in this spread, even though that's something you may be thinking about. I really feel like it's much sooner, and that's because of the decentralization. Once you get to the industrial era, you start having nation states, you start having very clear ideas of identity, and I'm just not sensing that in your spread. I am sensing that you lived much sooner in whichever country you were a part of, because I know industrialization and leaving feudalism happened at different states. In Europe, this probably would have been from like maybe like the 1100s to like the 1600s, maybe to the 1700s, but in other places it would have been much later. So it really just depends. So let's go ahead and pull 3 cards about what you did during your life to get some more information. I mean, it seems like your past life probably had like a lot of adventures and a lot of things, interesting things happened to them. So let's figure out what is important for you to know in this reading. And for this, I'm going to go back to the Mary Hanson Roberts Tarot deck. So, universe, what does pile 3 need to know about this life? What did they do during this life? What did pile 3 do during this life? What did pile 3 do during this life? All right, your first card is the Hierophant reversed. This is a card of disorganization. This is a card of basically rebelling against established authorities. So because I did pull this Queen of Swords card earlier, and I did sense that you were kind of like separate from like the normal like higher echelons of society, I do think you are a bit of a rebel. I do think that you found ways to gain wealth and be a leader that is kind of not normal. It's possible because this would have put you made you a bit of celebrity during this time. This could be an indication that this past life could be like someone whose name was recorded down in history. That is possible. There's one person I'm thinking about is like there's like this famous like Hildebrand in Europe who was like a really like important writer, something like that. That would be what I'm thinking about. A famous female figure from history who was either involved with the church or more likely involved with trade somehow or with money somehow. Now, the next card is the King of Rods reversed. This indicates that you may not have always been able to control what you do. So it may have been that, yes, you were involved in trade, and yes, you ended up in a position of power, a position of intellectual, like intellectual superiority, but I don't think it's necessarily what you wanted. And that may have been why you had this emotional return later on in your life, is because you actually didn't want to do these things. Perhaps you didn't want to join the church. Perhaps you didn't want to um, go on a trade route, but it's something you had to do. It's something you were forced to do, and you basically got in and out. You earned your money. You earned your social points, and then you did what you wanted to do. So let's get your third card. Your third card is the Ten of Cups reversed. So I do think this is another confirmation that you didn't have kids, that you didn't get married. I don't really get the sense that you got married. I really feel like you were part of a community, but not part of a family. And I think one thing this card could also indicate is that you either maybe lost your family, maybe you were an orphan, or maybe you ended up, because you were rebellious, you left your family either to make a living for yourself or to have that emotional return where you decide to be part of a community. It could be, for example, that you belong to a mercantile family and so you had to travel a lot and you didn't really like it, and perhaps you were actually really good with it, you were really good with numbers, you were really helpful, but it wasn't what you wanted. And it's possible, because I do sense a little bit of sadness from this Ten of Cups card, and because of this mature woman card, that you may have wanted to get married, that you may have wanted to have kids, but once you were able to stay in one place long enough, you just weren't able to have kids anymore. You were just too old. However, even though that's the case, I do get the overwhelming sense that you did have a fulfilling life, or at the very least that you found purpose in what you were doing. So you joining a community then may have been your way to have a replacement family, the family that you weren't able to have yourself. So perhaps you adopted kids, or perhaps you mentor kids, something like that. So what I'm going to do now is pull 2 cards from the Psychic Tarot Oracle deck to figure out anything else we need to know about your life about this life during the past. So universe, what did this past life do? What else do we need to know about this past life? What do we need to know about this past life and what they did? What do we need to know about this past life? And I did get this sense before, but this Queen of Swords card, now I'm generally getting the sense that is a woman spoken about in this spread. Even if you're a man now, you may have been a woman in your past life, but this could be about anyone on the outs. This could even be, for example, someone who was part of a displaced people. I know, for example, in Europe, that the Jewish people were often expelled from wherever they lived, and then they had to travel to other countries. And I know that sometimes some families would actually be involved with like mercantile trade, so that could be what you were involved in, something like that. So it is possible you may have been part of a minority religion, you could have been part of a minority race, but something in the sense to where you didn't quite fit in wherever you were. So let's get your next card. Your next card is mental conflict. So I do think on the inside you were actually quite at odds with yourself. And I do think this speaks to the other cards that I pulled, to where you were forced to do something in order to make a living, or in order to perhaps support your extended family, but it wasn't what you wanted. And I do think that even though later on in life when you joined a community, even though I'm certain you found purpose and you were very fulfilled with that, the fact that you weren't able to have a kid, that you weren't able to get married, may have been intensely disappointing to you. It is possible that even though you did join a community, You may not have joined a community that you shared a lot of things with. Maybe you were a minority in that community. Maybe they weren't the community of your childhood. So you did want to belong to them, but you were always kind of an outsider. And that's probably one because you are rebellious to begin with. So you would always stand out anyway. But I think for some of you, it could be like this community could be in a distant land, and maybe you weren't able to go home. Maybe you were stuck somewhere and you did make the most of it, but it was really frustrating for you. The next card is the transformation card, and I kind of see butterfly wings or wings in the background, and I do, because this is a woman card and I'm thinking of the woman in the spread that is generally indicated here. You had to go through a lot of transformations because of your disappointment about the way that your life transpired. You had to learn how to want new things. You had to learn how to want what you could reach for. So this makes me think a lot about um, having kids. For example, guys can usually have kids at any point in their life, but for women, the number of years that you can do that are actually quite limited. And so once you get past those years, you pretty much know if that was something you really wanted in your life that's never going to happen. And so I think in this case, that is kind of what is happening. Your past life knew that something that they wanted, whether it's kids, whether it's getting married, whether it is returning to their homeland. Some of you may have even had to convert to a new religion in order to fit in. It was really disappointing for you. And it probably took you many years in order to accept, or if not accept the new change, accept that it has changed and it can't go back. But once you did accept that, you were able to transform your life into different desires, into different goals. And so that's really like an important lesson because although we all have our dreams and we all try to achieve them, sometimes it's just not possible. For example, I imagine there was someone that wanted to be a computer. Uh, Decades ago, we didn't, like accountants and people that did math for companies or NASA, it was people that did those computations by hand or with like a computation machine. But once personal computers became more popular, those jobs just didn't exist anymore in the same sense that they did. So uh, learning how to want new things was definitely a lesson within this life. And it's probably a lesson that would help you now if you were able to either relive that experience or appreciate what your past self went through. So now we're going to ask the question of how you died. And obviously, everyone in the spread probably died in a slightly different way. Compared to my other two readings today, this spread is a little more varied, a little more broad. I'm not getting like a more specific identity, so perhaps there's like quite different personalities and quite different lives within the spread. So we're gonna see about your deaths to see if there's like one particular death type or if there's like multiple death types. So let's figure that out. The first thing we're going to do is pull 3 cards from the Mary Hanson Roberts deck to figure out more about your past life's death. All right, universe, how did pile 3's past life die? How did pile 3's past life die? All right, your first card is the Six of Wands. You went out in a blaze of glory. You had a very good reputation when you died, perhaps with your community, perhaps with something you achieved. So you definitely had a death that other people remembered, probably quite long after you were gone. And I did mention earlier, some of you may have been a celebrity or like a figure whose name was written down in history. And so it's possible that if you feel like oddly connected to someone in the past, that's you, especially if it is a woman who was part of like a monastic tradition or a religious tradition, or it was part of some sort of mercantile family. So let's get your second card. Oh, and I just got this feeling when I saw this card of this kind of assistant here. I think you may have taken on someone that you mentored. You may have adopted somebody. Your legacy lived through someone else. Even if this person wasn't biologically related to you or they weren't your child, you did have a legacy through a person. So the next card is the Three of Pentacles reversed. This is an indication that you didn't have a kid, you didn't get married, but particularly in this spread right now with how you died, I think you probably died away from your monastic tradition. You may have died with a bad reputation when it comes to your merchant organization, or if you were part of a clerical organization, maybe they thought, oh, this person's definitely going to hell. But I do think that even though you basically became a celebrity, even though the community very much respected you, you definitely had a fallout with your merchant group or with your religious group. And they probably did try to tarnish your reputation after you died. And they may have even succeeded a little bit. So let's get the third card. The third card is the Ace of Wands, a new passionate beginning. I'm really getting the sense that you reincarnated quite soon after you died in this life. You had some unfinished business and you were able to pursue that. So whatever you feel like was unfinished, and in this spread I really feel like it was getting married and having a kid, or pursuing the career that you would have preferred instead, because even though you were successful when it came to your career in this past, you definitely were a professional woman or a professional man. It wasn't what you wanted, but in your next life, immediately afterwards, you were born into a position to where you were able to have that. And I definitely think you were driven to pursue that. So, for example, if you were unable to have kids, your life directly after this one, you had kids as soon as possible. Like, you were probably a young parent. If you wanted a particular career, you did that as soon as possible. So I do think that when you died in this life, it left such an impression on your soul that you just immediately reincarnated. All right? And I do sense that this happened a long time ago. Like, this life happened quite long ago. Even if you're part of a country that didn't industrialize until recently, I really don't get the sense that you were born in like the late 1800s or the early 1900s and then immediately reincarnated into your current life. A lot of the unfinished business of this particular life in this spread, you tried to reconcile in the life that proceeded immediately afterwards. And because of that, you may not actually remember this life, because like the pain that you suffered, the emotional pain that you suffered, was healed in a life before the current life you lived. So it's quite possible this is a life you just don't remember at all. So let's go ahead and pull two cards from the Dark Mirror Oracle deck. This is my most negative deck that I own, so it should give us some interesting things about your death if there was something really dark involved. So universe, what do we need to know about Pile 3's death? What do we need to know about Pile 3's death? I wonder if you were murdered. We're gonna find out. We're gonna find out what happened to you. One thing I'm thinking about, and this may have even for one of you or some of you, because sometimes souls split and they incarnate into multiple people. Someone in this pile may have been Hypatia, who was like this religious leader in the late Roman Empire, I believe, and she was killed, I think, by Christians actually. Um, it may not have been religious, it may have been religious, I don't know, but she was killed even though she's like this amazing person who, even though like she was a woman at this time and women didn't tend to have positions of power, she did, and but she was eventually killed. Anyway, let's figure out more about this death before I get too interested in that. So this is the Queen of My World card. This is an indication that you had power over something. You may have had power over an entire community. Um, you may have had like a lot of property and a lot of property that you enjoyed. Um, I think you probably had a materially comfortable life, or you had a lot of leisure that you could enjoy and a lot of power. Let's get the next card. The next card is the colorless angel card. So this indicates depression. This could indicate that you did commit some sort of sin or some sort of like misdeed, and perhaps that's the reason why you ended up being charitable, and perhaps that is why your religious organization or your merchant organization tried to tarnish your reputation. Maybe you deserved it. Maybe you actually did do something wrong in this life, but you spent so much time after that trying to fix your wrongs. You really wanted to make up for the bad karma that you incurred. So I really don't get the sense, because we know that you reincarnated immediately and manifested the desires that you wanted, that you died in bad standing. I think that you died fully forgiven for what you did spiritually, even if human organizations didn't recognize it. I do think that you fully fully redeemed yourself. Um, so I'm not getting a specific sense of how you died, like a specific method. And because this spread is just so broad in the potential types of people it could have applied to, there is quite a few possible deaths. Now, what I do know is that because you got to the point of being a mature woman or like a mature figure, that you at least made it to 40 or 50, and maybe older than that, and you died after you reached a position of authority. So you definitely made it to late middle age or an elderly age. So you probably died of natural causes, but because I was really feeling that Hypatia energy, some of you may have been murdered, and it may have been the merchant organization you belong to, the clerical or the religious clerical organization you belong to. Like, they wanted to get rid of you, they wanted to execute you for your crimes, and so maybe they actually were able to succeed with that. But I do want you to know that the community that you helped and whoever you ended up mentoring, they were able to carry your lessons. They were able to carry positive memories about you forward. So you had a positive effect on the world. You didn't end being a villain, even though I do think there is some indication in your spread that you may have done something wrong. Um, I don't think you probably murdered somebody, but perhaps when you were in a religious organization, you were kind of cruel. You may not have. You may have been oppressive somehow, or if you were part of a merchant organization, and we do know that if you were part of a merchant organization, you went over enemy lines. You may have smuggled things. You may have made things difficult for like a country who was trying to win a war, something like that. But pretty interesting, all things considered. You definitely had a pretty epic life. Your life was not at all boring. So what we're going to do now is we are going to pull 3 cards from the Mary Hanson Roberts deck to figure out why knowing about this specific life that we're learning about today is so important. Why is this story important to you? How is it affecting you? Or how is it affecting the world? So, universe, what does pile 3 need to know about this life? Why was it important? Why this life over others? Why was this life important? What was significant about this past life? All right, your first card is the 8 of Swords. This is a card of oppression. It's also a card of willing oppression, to where you kind of like bind yourself to something. So I think that it represents the evils of humanity. So it represents how the evils of humanity hurt other people, and it represents how those things were like choices. Sometimes people act in ways that they wouldn't if they were in better situations, but I think in this case, your life is an example of people acting incorrectly, like the expulsion of the Jewish people, the oppression of women, smuggling, things like that. It is an indication of the crimes around you, but also the crimes that you committed in that past life. The second card is the Hermit. This is an indication of illumination, of expertise. We do know that you were a mature woman or a mature figure who ended up having like someone that they mentored. I do think that whatever you passed on, it's still around. It either influenced a movement that evolved on its own, or it's around about something here today. Let's use literary figures for example. Someone writes something, they influence someone else, and even though there's many literary movements in between that and today, you can see the influence if you study it. So I do think that you had some sort of historical significance. And it's possible, even though you may not remember this specific life without a past life regression, that your soul may feel like a kinship with someone from history, like a special kinship. Perhaps when you read their writing, if it's a writer, or when you hear about their biography, because I do really get the sense that this person's name is in history. It's someone that you would be able to learn about if you look them up online. If you're curious, look for famous religious female leaders or like minorities from your country or history, and see if anybody resonates with you. But it's not like there was just like one woman who did this, or one minority who stood out in history. So it could take you your entire life to find this person. So look if you want, but know it may take a while. Instead of like a particular person, ask yourself if you're drawn to something, if you're drawn to like art or literature or like certain social causes, something like that. If that's the case, you may be able to find this person through that. So the third tarot card here is the Wheel of Fortune reversed. So we know that this past life had quite a bit of misfortune, and they were able to turn things around, even if they weren't able to get everything they wanted. And it seems like they may have had, some of them may have been murdered, because I really get the sense that happened for some of you. Their life overall was positive, or that their life had a positive effect. And why I think this life is significant for you to learn about now is that if you did a past life regression, or if you learned about women or minorities from history and how they were able to succeed despite difficult circumstances, even if you can't find the particular one that you're connected to, it's going to be a story that really, really inspires you. And if you don't really care about history, you could actually do that for people who are alive today, people who are women or minorities, or people who are up against like impossible challenges and somehow overcome it. That will really inspire you and will help you activate the energy in the spread in your own life. So we are going to finish with 2 cards from the Sacred Destiny Oracle to figure out anything else that we need to know about why this matters now. So universe, why does this life matter now to pile 3, or the world? Why does this life matter now? Why does this life matter now? Why does this life matter now? So the first card is pleasure. I think this life, maybe you are meant to do amazing things, but I also think it's important that you do what you want to do. Don't just think about your responsibilities, don't just think about your higher purpose. Really make sure that you're tending to your needs, that you're having self-care, that you're doing the other side projects that you're interested in. For example, maybe there are music artists who really do feel like it is their higher purpose to create art, but then if you hear them talk about their lives, they often say how much they love having kids or something like that. And even though they have this higher purpose and it's obvious it's their higher purpose, they have their own personal quests. They have their own things that are just for them, things that are personally fulfilling to them. And I think that's going to be the case for you. There are going to be things that aren't connected to your higher purpose, and it may not seem like it's important in the grand scheme of things, but it's important to you. For example, your past life, they ended up being a celebrity, they ended up having historical significance, but this person died disappointed that they couldn't have a family, that they couldn't get married, that they couldn't have kids. And as soon as they reincarnated, that was their focus. So really think about, what are your selfish desires? What are the things that you want to do for yourself, that you want to enjoy? Make sure that you're pursuing them in this life, because what this spread can teach you more than anything else is that just because you're pursuing a higher purpose doesn't make you happy. It can make you fulfilled, but it may not make you happy. So you definitely want to tend to your happiness. And because this reading is from the universe, this is a sign that the universe has given you permission to seek this pleasure. So the last card today is Success Reversed. I was going to put it upright because I usually do put oracle cards upright, but I really, really resonated with this card being reversed. And that's not to say that you aren't going to be successful, but rather don't focus too much on success in this life. Make sure that you are doing things just because you like doing them. And what you may think is success may not at all be the success that ends up happening. Your past life probably assumed that success for them would be having kids, would be getting married, but that didn't happen. And yet their life was still somehow successful. As long as you're pursuing your higher purpose, you're not resisting the life that's being laid out for you, you can pursue those things and also have the things that you want. Because, I bet this person could have gotten married, could have gotten kids if they made that another priority compared to whatever else they were doing in life. But it may have been a choice, and it may have been a choice that they regretted later. So for you, what you really need to learn is that you don't want to regret not having fun. You don't want to regret not enjoying things. You definitely want to make part of this life just enjoyment. So really go have fun. Maybe right after this reading, just go do something fun for yourself. If you need to, delay responsibility for a few hours. That's perfectly fine. Really go have fun. Anyway, pile 3, this was a really interesting spread. It's a really broad energy, so I'm not getting a specific person in mind, even though this person was a celebrity, so that could be a sign of multiple people like this in history, and it's the reason why, because it wasn't looking for a type of person, but like a shared lineage of awesome women or minorities, and it was trying to pick their energy to share with everyone who picked this pile. But really interesting, really cool. If you resonated with this, be sure to like the video and to subscribe for my channel for more videos in the future, because I would love to see you again. So, my soul friends, I can't wait for that to happen.